Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Deku joined the League of Villains. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. All Might and Izuku stood there for about a minute staring at each other. The silence was broken by Izuku. Could we talk somewhere more private? Izuku politely requested. I don't think you'll want the students to hear what we say. I know a place, All Might replied. No one will disturb us there. In an instant, All Might took them both to the resting room where he transformed into his true form. He looked less impressive, but Izuku didn't really care. Still, it was strange seeing him like this again. Last time it had been by chance, this time it was intentional. The two of them sat straight across from each other, both wearing stoic expressions. So, what is it you wanted to talk about? Izuku asked, getting straight to the point. The symbol of peace stared at him momentarily before speaking. How are you doing, Adue, and in general? He asked. Izuku raised an eyebrow. Why would he ask a question like that? Then again, it was probably the best way to start up a conversation. Adue, I'm doing fine, the classes are decent, and I have no trouble with any of the subjects, Izuku calmly explained. As for how I'm doing in general, I'm annoyed, angry, frustrated, sad, and would rather be anywhere but here. All Might wasn't surprised at Izuku's outburst. He knew he wasn't happy about being here. The police had made it clear that he did not want to come here. They went so far as to say he'd rather be in prison. I'm going to skip past the boring questions if that's alright for you, Izuku stated. Back at the bar, you knew who I was. You suspected it. I want to know how. This had been something Izuku wanted to know for quite some time. No matter how much he thought over it, he couldn't understand how he had been discovered. He kept a very low profile in the league and hardly went out except for his job. He didn't interact with that many villains in or out of the league either, barring Gentle and La Brava. Then there was one other time when Razor brought him to the criminal underworld to see how screwed up the world really was. His memory of the event was fuzzy, but he knew he had gone. It hadn't been a fun experience. Of that, he was certain. All Might took a deep breath. He did tell him back at the bar he would explain everything. Back at the ISJ, I recognized your voice and eye from our previous encounter, he explained. There was also evidence of how you were able to beat young Deku without a quirk. That's when I got suspicious. Why did you even bother remembering that time? Izuku cut him off confused. It couldn't have been that important to you. In truth, Izuku was taken off guard by All Might's explanation. Why would the number one hero bother to remember an encounter with a quirkless person? I couldn't stop thinking about it, All Might admitted. I wasn't actually proud of what I said to you. I only said it because. Was he actually going to tell the boy about this? This was a secret passed on for generations. Izuku guessed what he was trying to say. Because you used to be quirkless, Izuku finished. All Might's eyes widened in shock. How did he guess that? Izuku decided that it was his turn to shock him. One for all. That's what your quirk is, right? A power born from Sensei and is passed on for generations through taking on the previous user's DNA, Izuku told him. It stockpiles massive amounts of power. All Might was speechless. From what he had been told, Izuku didn't possess any critical information about the League. So why, just why, was he told about One for All? Did the rest of the League know? Sensei told me about it after defeating Deku. I must say, I was quite surprised to find out, especially the part about you being quirkless, Izuku continued. You wouldn't believe how angry I was when I found out. The guy who used to be quirkless, looking down another quirkless person. It really pissed me off. All Might shifted uncomfortably. He wanted to make it up to Midoriya, he did. He never meant to cause him so much pain, so much that he tried to kill himself. However, the boy did have a right to be angry with him. I thought you were a hypocrite, and even now I still believe it, Izuku said. However, I had a nice long conversation with Stain, and I realized that you must have had a reason for saying what you said. So, I concluded that you may have tried to be a hero when you were quirkless, but it backfired, and you took One for All to have a chance. Toshinori did his best to refrain from flinching. From certain points of view, yes, he was a hypocrite. After preaching on about how anyone can become a hero when asked by a quirkless boy, he told him it was impossible. You're wrong, All Might admitted. Whenever I tried to be a hero without a quirk, I usually got my ass handed to me. But my master saw potential in me and decided to pass on her power to me, despite the fact I was quirkless. I had to go through a lot of training for it though. Izuku got the sense this woman was, or had been, one of the few true heroes in this world. The kind that was in it for noble reasons, and not the usual selfish ones. Does the rest of the league know about this? All Might asked. I have no idea, Izuku replied honestly. Whether Sensei told Tomura or Kurogiri, I don't know. I don't know about the other divisions in the league either. Don't worry, I'm not gonna start running my mouth about it. I have a very good idea what would happen if that were made public knowledge. The likely scenario would be villains of all kinds trying to get their hands on that power. In other words, all hell would break loose. and if someone by some miracle actually succeeded, they could be a real pain in the ass. All Might sighed with relief. Thank you, All Might said. You don't need to thank me. It's just better if that quirk remains a secret, Izuku stated. Now, back to the matter at hand. How did you know who I was? What evidence was there? Aside from your iron voice, I didn't have much. So, I asked Sakauchi to show me a list of quirkless people in Japan. I recognized your face and learned your name there. When I saw your eyes were the same as back at the SJ, I became suspicious, even more after I learned you disappeared the day I met you. Izuku didn't react. It wasn't much, but it was evidence. He never imagined All Might would have remembered him. Perhaps, he should have been more cautious when his mask broke. What confirmed it then? Izuku asked. You said you knew I was Deku. That means there must have been something or someone to definitely confirm it. All Might looked down. All for One wasn't kidding when he said Izuku was intelligent. He knew he wouldn't be happy when he found out though. I spoke with your mother, All Might said simply. Izuku's eyes whitened. He then changed to a glare. He did what? He snarled. The mere idea of All Might involving his mother in this infuriated him. I spoke with your mother, All Might repeated. She didn't know who I was since we met while I was under disguise. She came in for a report about you, and I claimed to be a new detective working on the case. From there onward, I learned about your past, your history with Bakugo, and your desire to be a hero. It was when she said that Deku was a nickname given to you by Bakugo that my suspicions were confirmed. Well, that made sense to Izuku. He was still angry that he talked to his mother though. Okay. Now that that's out of the way, I'll move on. Why were you so determined to find me? Izuku demanded. Were you feeling guilty about what you said to me? All Might straightened up. Yes. Please believe me, I never meant to cause you that much pain. I had no idea what you were going through back then, All Might explained. I was trying to save you. Izuku rolled his eyes. Bit late for that, don't you think? He said. I didn't need saving, I didn't even want it. I was happy where I was. If you're planning on giving me some heroic speech about how I can change and become a hero now, save it. I have no interest in becoming a hero. I abandoned that goal a long time ago. All Might was surprised. Why would he not want to be a hero now that he had the chance? I know you're upset about what I said, but back then, I didn't think about how quirkless people could be on par with quirked individuals, until I spoke with Nezu, All Might said before Izuku cut him off. I'm just gonna stop you there. It doesn't matter what you think now. What you're trying to say, I needed to hear that before I tried to kill myself, Izuku stated. Not now that I'm a villain. All Might froze. Guilt twisted inside his stomach. Izuku sighed. Look, if it makes you feel any better, you are not the main reason why I tried to end my life. You were the last straw, but not the main reason. There were plenty of others, he explained. All Might said nothing. He knew what had occurred in Izuku's life, and it wasn't pleasant. Besides, I'm not even mad at you anymore, well, not as much. If anything, I should thank you for giving me that piece of advice, Izuku continued. You were right, at first I felt resentment towards you, but eventually, I realized you were right. All Might looked at him confused. It's not wrong to dream. Just make sure it's achievable, Izuku quoted. Back then you were telling me to be realistic. Well, I did. I became realistic about our society. No matter what I did or tried, people like Katsuki and Endeavor would never accept a quirkless kid like me being a hero. Because society basically hates people like me. All Might couldn't believe what he was hearing. Society may have been prejudiced against the quirkless, but it didn't hate them, though there wasn't much of a difference. He wasn't sure about some like Endeavor not accepting a quirkless hero. There would be no reason to. Judging by his reaction, Izuku guessed he didn't believe him. Well, it was time for All Might to take his own advice. Did you know Endeavor hates and is envious of you? Izuku asked. That question caught All Might completely off guard. Denji hated and envied him. What was he talking about? I don't know what you mean. Endeavor may seem hostile towards me, but he's like that with everyone, All Might said. And I can't see why he would envy me. Izuku groaned in frustration. He smacked his palm against his forehead. Has being the symbol of peace made you so naive to the world around you? Izuku questioned. It must if you can't see what kind of person Endeavor really is, or what kind of society we are living in. You must not have enough time since you are always running to the scene of a crime. All Might gazed at him confused. Izuku was right about the part where he didn't have a lot of free time. As the symbol of peace, he was always trying to save whoever he came across or heard about. Endeavor loathes you for being the #1 hero, a spot he's always wanted. The man envies you for it so much that he has been working for years to take it from you by any means necessary, Izuku explained. He really hates being the #2 hero. He made that clear when I met him yesterday. All Might was surprised at this information. While it was true, he had been the top pro for many years, he hadn't done it to compete, he did to save people. And yet, Enji hated him for it. He hated that he was more popular than him. No, that wasn't it at all. Enji had never cared about being popular, he liked being seen as the best. The fact that he had been the #2 hero for a long time now must have really made him angry. On top of that, he views quirkless people like me as, and I am literally quoting, the weakest creatures to walk the earth. So yeah, he does not have a high opinion of people like me. He's also violent, hot-tempered and a complete asshole from what I've gathered from my previous encounters with him, Izuku continued. Look, I know he doesn't have the nicest personality, All Might said defending his colleague. But he isn't a bad person. Izuku sighed again. Don't be so sure. Being in a position of power like he has allowed him to do things most people couldn't or wouldn't do, Izuku said. All Might was confused by that statement. Izuku was careful not to mention Shoto. It was Shoto's story, not his, he had no right to tell it. You know, I get that you want to see the best in other people like him and Katsuki, and believe they can change and be better. I get that you want to see it in me, I really do, and while that isn't wrong, sometimes you just need to be realistic and see people for what they really are, Izuku declared. I believe in redemption, but honestly, some people just don't deserve it. All Might was left speechless at Izuku's statement. Izuku was right about many things. All Might did always try to see the best in others. But Bakugo he tried to be supportive and gave him advice so he could be a better hero, and with Enji, he had always been rather friendly and treated him with respect. With both, however, he had always been treated with hostility. He had never really thought about it before but, now that he did, he felt like an idiot for not seeing it sooner. He reflected on what Endeavor said about Izuku being quirkless in the monitor room. He was definitely prejudiced. Then there was what he said about young Todoroki using his left side. In all the years he had known Enji, it was incredibly rare for him to look even remotely happy. Todoroki not using his left side, was this the rebellion he spoke up back at the sports festival when they met face to face? Back then he said he created Todoroki, and that his son would one day beat him. Were those related to the ambitions he spoke about before? Was he trying to use his own son to take him down? All Might didn't want to believe it, but from the way Enji treated Shoto, like a tool rather than a son, it did seem likely. Perhaps you are right, All Might said sullenly. I do need to be realistic. However, while someone has the chance for redemption, I believe they should take it. Really? Izuku responded sarcastically. Does that include individuals like Shigaraki, All for One and Kurogiri? All Might hesitated slightly before answering. All for One is dead so it's not possible. Shigaraki and Kurogiri, it is, he said. People may do terrible things in their lives, but there's no reason why they can't make up and atone for it. Evil isn't born, it's made. The same with good. Izuku's eyes widened. That was what he had heard from Kurogiri, and what he had said to many people. He believed in that sentence. And apparently so did All Might. They aren't as bad as you think you know. Once you get to know them at least, Izuku said softly. I don't know if they would go down the path you're suggesting though. I'm not going to tell you how, but they were both driven to becoming villains. I can't argue with you on that one, All Might admitted. I hardly know any personal details about them. Shigaraki just so happens to be a relative of my master, but he hates me. Izuku was surprised at what he had just heard. Tomohiro was related to the person that trained All Might. Looking back, he could vaguely remember Sensei saying something about a woman named Nana Shimura during his battle with All Might. Shimura was Tomohiro's true surname, so it was possible. He had only caught bits and pieces of the conversation, since he was dodging the mini-pods trying to kill him. All Might was wrong about one thing though. Shigaraki doesn't hate you exactly, he hates what you stand for and you've done to society, Izuku reasoned. All Might tilted his head slightly confused. Realizing this, Izuku attempted to explain. They stand for a false society where people can always smile even without a reason, because in that society they believe they have nothing to worry about. That's also a problem. You see, in that society, the citizens are too dependent on you and other heroes like there's nothing you can save them from. They rely on you too much and stop relying on themselves because they foolishly believe that a hero will always come and save them. That makes them weak. When someone else is in danger they won't help that person because they think a hero will save them eventually. But here's the kicker, there's always the scenario where a hero doesn't come, and that person dies because those civilians believed a hero would sort everything out, Izuku preached. They believe a hero will always save them, completely oblivious to the fact that not everyone gets saved. It didn't happen to Shigaraki and it didn't happen to me. It doesn't happen to thousands of others. All Might was dumbfounded. Is that what Shigaraki truly thought of him? He couldn't deny he was right. Not everyone got saved. There were moments when he had failed to save someone. People see you as more than a hero, All Might. They see you as a benevolent god who can't be destroyed and will always be there to protect them, Izuku continued. But you can't, can you? No matter how good you are, or how much you try, at the end of the day, you are still only human. You can't do everything or save everyone. And when you die, this society we live in will shatter completely, and there will be widespread fear and panic, because that's how much people depend on you. It's why Shigaraki hates you. Because of how fragile society has become. All Might was speechless. This boy, even without him verifying it, knew just what he went through every day of his life. The burden he carried with being the symbol of peace. Most people would have jumped at the chance for such a position, but they didn't realize the enormous responsibility that came with it. Midoriya did, however. He also understood what would happen if there wasn't a symbol to protect others. You're one of the few people I've met that's actually realized this, All Might acknowledged. I'm not like other people. I look deeper into things than most do, Izuku admitted. All Might didn't argue against that, not that he could. I'm surprised All For One didn't offer you a quirk, All Might said. Considering how gifted you are. Actually, he did, Izuku grudgingly admitted. However, I refuse. All Might's eyes widened. At that moment he felt both shock and surprise at what Midoriya just said. Everyone wanted one as a child. For someone to reject having one was unheard of. Why? All Might asked nervously. I don't mean it as an insult. I'm just wondering why. Izuku bit his lip. He stared at the floor. He remembered exactly why he had said no. It had been an incredibly important moment of his life. Well, Izuku started. Flashback. Izuku and All For One were in Izuku's apartment talking after Izuku's victory over Katsuki. They had just finished talking about All Might's quirk, something Izuku was particularly furious about, but decided to keep his emotions in check. Now that that's over and done with, I'll move on to the other reason for me being here, Sensei announced. Ha, Izuku exhaled confused. After everything Sensei had told him, what else could he possibly give him? You've done a lot for the league, and well, you deserve a reward, Sensei explained. As I already told you, my quirk allows me to take and give quirks to others, including myself. I've come to offer you one of your choice. Izuku froze. He had literally stopped breathing for a couple of seconds. The quirk. He was being offered a quirk. This was something he had wanted his entire life. It was something he had dreamed of having since he was little. It would make him like everyone else. Like everyone else. Izuku stopped for a moment and started to consider this. The quirk was something he wanted when he was part of society, the people that persecuted him for not having a quirk. Did he really want one now? He had proven how competent he was without one. He had proven that he could be just as good as those without quirks. And he was proud of it. Izuku, Sensei called. Izuku looked up at Sensei. Taking a deep breath, he gave his answer. Thank you for the offer, Sensei, but I must refuse, Izuku replied honestly. Sensei was stunned at what he had just heard. He expected Izuku to jump at his offer, only to be rejected. Don't take this the wrong way. I'm grateful, I really am, but after everything I've been through, I don't think I need one anymore, Izuku said. Oh, Sensei responded amused and intrigued. Izuku looked at the floor before looking at the man seriously. Me wanting a quirk was me wanting to be accepted by a community that loathed me for not having a quirk. They called me weak and useless and looked down on me. You and the others accepted me for who I was, and acknowledged that I was something more than just quirkless. You made me into a stronger person, one who doesn't need to get by with a quirk, Izuku explained. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of what I've managed to achieve without a quirk. I'm proud to be quirkless. And that's why I'm saying no to your offer. There was silence between the two. Izuku hoped he hadn't offended Sensei in any way by saying that. It was just the way he felt. Much to his surprise, Sensei started laughing. I see, Sensei chuckled. Well, if that's how you feel, then I suppose I can't argue against it. You aren't mad, Izuku questioned. Of course not, Sensei told him. If you wish to remain quirkless, then so be it. I'm not biased about that sort of thing. The offer is still there if you ever change your mind. Thank you, Izuku said. Sensei stared at him for a moment. You're just like him, he murmured under his breath. What? Izuku asked confused. Sensei realized what he just said and corrected himself. Oh, nothing, he said quickly before opening a portal to leave. I have to head back now, Deku. Rest for today. You've earned it. Yes, sure, Izuku replied as Sensei disappeared into the portal. Flashback end. Izuku could still remember that conversation quite clearly in his mind, and how he felt during it. That day, it was the first time he'd ever said he was proud to be quirkless. That day he felt like a large weight had been lifted from his chest. After that, he never wanted to have a quirk, because he didn't need one. He was already strong without it. All Might was stunned at what he had just heard. He had never heard of anyone saying they were proud to be quirkless before. Even he hadn't been happy not to possess a quirk. Furthermore, if Midoriya didn't want a quirk, then there was no reason for him to receive one for all, something he had been considering. Who was the first wielder of one for all? Izuku asked. I'm curious as to who Sensei trusted enough to bestow a powerful quirk upon. All Might didn't have a problem answering that. It was All For One's younger brother, he admitted. He already had a quirk that could be passed on to others. The two quirks merged, and One For All was born. Sensei had a brother, Izuku exclaimed surprised. He had never even asked the man if he had a family. But, if he gave a quirk to his brother, why would that brother turn against him? Yeah, I don't know much about him though, All Might admitted. It's just what I was told by my master. Izuku decided that he had heard and said enough. He stood up and started to leave. I'm gonna head back now. I've got work to do, Izuku stated. Of course, and thank you for speaking with me, All Might said. Regardless of what you believe or think of me, you can become a hero. You've shown you are capable of it. Whatever, Izuku retorted before leaving. Overwhelmed by the ordeal, All Might sighed deeply. It went much better than he expected. UA dormitories. Izuku had just finished his homework and was going to go to sleep when he remembered he hadn't spoken to Dabi since arriving. Thanks to the police, there was a link set up to his computer to where Dabi was being kept. He activated the app and a few seconds later Dabi's face appeared. Hey Deku, Dabi greeted. How's school? Eventful, Izuku replied simply. How's jail? Lonely and uneventful, Dabi retorted. It's not so bad once you get used to it. Izuku chuckled slightly. So, what big events have occurred since I last saw you? Dabi asked. Well, Izuku started. And so, he explained everything that happened to him since came here. Dabi was impressed with how he handled himself and applauded him for standing his ground. When he mentioned the conversation he had with Endeavor, Dabi burst out laughing. Oh man, you actually said those things to him, and he just stood there pissing his pants, unable to make a comeback, he shouted. I wish I could have seen that. Izuku raised an eyebrow. Judging from that reaction, I'm guessing you don't like Endeavor, Izuku guessed. Are you kidding me? I hate that guy, Dabi said with a serious tone and expression. How anyone can like him is beyond me. Izuku had to agree with him on that one. I feel bad for Todoroki though. I can't believe he had to put up with that man for 15 years, Izuku said. I can, Dabi said venomously. Endeavor is a huge asshole who does whatever the hell he wants without consequence. Izuku was slightly intrigued by that statement. Did Dabi know Endeavor personally? Or had he just come to that conclusion based on encounters he had with the man? He didn't get the chance to learn as Dabi said he needed to log off, otherwise he'd get in trouble. Izuku didn't argue, so he said his goodbyes and logged off also. Tired, he went to bed and slept till his alarm woke him up the next morning. The blast of an accumulation of quirks hit against the walls of the mountain. It was like All for One's during his battle with All Might. However, it did not have as many quirks, so it was not nearly as powerful. It was also less controlled, leading to the user suffering from recoil. God fucking damn it. Atrocity shouted as he clutched his right hand. Currently, he was in the mountains doing some training with his new powers. Unfortunately, it wasn't going very well. Despite having inherited All for One's quirks, Atrocity didn't fully have control over them. Inheriting the quirks does not automatically make you a master. It is going to take some practice, like with all quirks. It took All for One decades to master his, because every time he took a new quirk, he would need to practice in order to use it to their full power and potential. Those quirk amalgamation moves he created took lots of practice and control, most of which earned him scars. So be patient, otherwise, this will backfire on you terribly. The one who had spoken those words to him was none other than Viper after he interrogated her. Though she said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. That subhuman bitch, Atrocity growled. Why does she have to be right? As humiliating as it was for him to admit it, Viper was right. This would take some practice. It would also take time. Currently, Atrocity was in the middle of establishing control over the world of crime in Japan. So far, he had made people aware of his power, and they had begun to fear him, which was good. Some crime gangs and villains were causing his group trouble, but that was to be expected. Besides, if it were easy to take over, then it wouldn't be any fun. Hades, especially the leader, was very problematic. However, he had plans to deal with them when the time came. His forces had grown since the prison breakout. The inmates, excluding those who escaped, had pledged their loyalty to him after freeing them. Toxic Chainsaw, in particular, was a powerful asset, having killed several groups all by himself. He enjoyed working with Viper again, though he was not aware of her circumstances, not that there was anything he could have done about it. Tamura's group was still missing. Wherever All for One sent them, he had made sure that they wouldn't be found. Now, it didn't matter. Soon they would all be dead, with each deprived of their quirks. Deku was also missing. Kroon hadn't been able to verify whether he was dead or not since the hospital incident. He wasn't mad at her. She had done her job perfectly. And if Deku did turn out to be alive, he would hunt that quirkless bastard down himself and kill him with his own two hands. His thoughts were interrupted by his phone buzzing. It was Deathbolt. What's up? Atrocity questioned. There have been sightings of dark mist appearing in different areas, Deathbolt responded. Strangely enough, there haven't been any sightings of Kurogiri. You think a guy like him would be easy to find. Anyway, I was planning to investigate alongside Muscular. That alright with you? Atrocity considered this for a moment. Fine. From what I know about him, Kurogiri used to have a regular body, so he may be using that to get around without anyone seeing him, he explained. I want you to capture him, for both information and his quirk. If you both fail, you will be severely punished. Deathbolt acknowledged this and hung up. Atrocity returned to his training where he continued to struggle, much to his frustration. UA dormitories. Once again Izuku was up and getting ready for school. He headed downstairs for breakfast. However, instead of meeting Shoto this time, it was Mina. Good morning Midoriya, she politely greeted him. Sleep well. Well enough, he replied. What about you? Have you recovered from your previous ordeal? Mina raised an eyebrow. By previous ordeal you mean where I was kidnapped by a psychopath to be intensely tortured by an even bigger psychopath, only to be saved and released later by you, Mina exclaimed. Izuku nodded and she continued speaking. I'm fine really. I was a little traumatized, but that was fixed by therapy. Izuku was relieved to hear that. However, he noticed that Mina's expression had turned sad. I didn't get a chance to say this to you before because you were settling in, but Mina started. I'm sorry about what happened to All for One. I know he meant a lot to you. Izuku stiffened up. He wasn't mad at Mina, just surprised. She was probably the first person to express condolences towards him for Sensei besides his mother and Dabi. "Thank you," he said simply. "That means a lot to me." Mina smiled at him. "I didn't know him as well as you did, but aside from you, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here," she admitted. "And for that, I'm quite grateful." Izuku said nothing. Mina wasn't wrong about Sensei. He was the reason she was here. He was the deciding factor in her being placed in his custody. "How did you know he was dead?" Izuku asked. "It was over the news when they discussed the breakout at Tartarus prison," Mina explained. So, Sensei's death had been made public. Considering it was related to the breakout at Tartarus, it made sense for it to be made public. Mina's face then turned nervous. I don't really have the right to ask, but," Mina started. "Go on," Izuku urged. Do they know who did it?" she asked uncertainly. Izuku stared at her. He hadn't expected her to ask that sort of question. Gritting his teeth, he stared hatefully at the ground. "It was Atrocity," Izuku snarled. Mina flinched at the name. In doing so, she accidentally knocked her cup over and it fell and shattered on the ground. She had never met the man, but, hearing about him, the things he did to people like her, it was enough to frighten her. Her reaction did not go unnoticed. Izuku looked up at her with a calmer expression. He really couldn't blame Mina for being afraid. He was also behind the mini-pod attack during the Battle of Kamino, and, though there isn't much evidence, it's heavily implied that he was the one who was behind the assault on the villain hospital, Izuku told her. "Both times he was trying to kill me." Mina's eyes widened. "Is this because you held me back then?" she asked seriously. "That's probably one reason," Izuku admitted. "From what I've heard about him, he despises quirkless people like me more than the average." Mina felt guilt swarm up in her chest. "I'm sorry," she said. "It's because of me that you nearly died." Izuku gave her an incredulous look. "Why?" "It's not your fault," he told her. "Considering the type of person he is, he would have come after me eventually. So don't beat yourself up over it." As much as Mina wanted to believe him, she still felt guilty. "So, how are you finding UA?" she asked, trying to change the subject. Izuku frowned. It was the second time someone had asked him that question. "It's fine, I guess. It has its ups and downs, but otherwise, it's alright," he said. "You certainly made an impression by defeating Bakugo and Todoroki," Mina told him. "I bet," Izuku said. "The quirkless boy beating the two strongest students would shock anyone. Although personally, I thought it was a draw between me and Todoroki because we both collapsed at the end." "He certainly stood through his fire well enough," Mina admitted. "I've spent time around Dabi," Izuku retorted. "Believe me, his flames are hotter." "Whatever happened to Dabi?" "That man, Compress I think his name was, gave him to you, didn't he?" Mina asked. "He's fine," Izuku told her. "I freed him during the hospital battle to help fight what was after me. He's in police custody now, but he's fine. We're still in contact, and since he hasn't committed any major crimes, aside from the kidnapping, he may be released soon." "That's good to hear," Mina said. She didn't have any problem with Dabi, nor Toga, and Twice for that matter. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Iida and Tokoyami, who greeted them both and asked about the broken cup. When Mina gave them a suitable answer, they didn't press any further. Tokoyami had gotten used to Midoriya quickly, especially since they had been teammates, so he didn't have a problem with him attending UA. Though he did keep his guard up. Iida had already accepted him and spoke with Midoriya frequently. They even ate lunch together now. They all spoke for a tiny bit before heading to class. UA hallways hours later. The day had gone by rather quickly. Classes were alright, and now he was doing hero training with the others. All Might was there, but they didn't talk to each other. Neither of them really wanted to after what happened yesterday. While sparring with Ectoplasm, he asked if it was possible to get back some of the gadgets he'd used while working with the League. Ectoplasm doubted it, but Oz always said that if he wanted to make a weapon to better defend himself, he should go to the development studio where he could get it done. Though he would be supervised by the teacher present, which was why he was on his way there now to make a request. Naturally, he was curious about the development studio as it was part of the support department, something he hadn't seen much of. According to Aizawa, it was where students could go to adjust their hero costumes if they wanted. As he stood outside the door, he prepared to walk in when he heard Tenya and Achako's voices. They were both talking about what improvements they wanted to their costumes when they saw and greeted him. He did the same while opening the door. That was when an explosion occurred from within the development studio and sent him flying. Tenya and Achako were immediately horrified at what had just happened. Out of the smoke, Power Loader appeared coughing and looking exhausted. "You can't just go around making whatever you think of," he berated the girl that had been blasted outside the room. "Hahaha, failure is the mother of invention, Power Loader sensei. Thomas Edison once said that. Just because an invention doesn't work as it's intended doesn't mean the effort is wasted," the girl justified. Power Loader didn't like that answer, however. "That's not the point. You almost blew up the entire studio. Will you please open your ears and listen to me for once, Hatsume?" he said very irritatedly. The smoke cleared, and a girl with pink locks and yellow eyes with crosshairs for pupils became visible. What's more, she was lying on top of Izuku, who had been briefly deafened from the explosion. When his hearing returned, he opened his eyes to see Hatsume on top of him. Where did you come from? She asked, having finally noticed him. Ichako saw Hatsume on Izuku, as well as the size of her chest, which was in close proximity to Izuku's face. She did not know why, but at that moment, she became extremely jealous of Hatsume. Izuku, who didn't have a clear understanding of the situation, also noticed this. However, he was neither fazed nor flustered in the slightest. In fact, he was quite angry and got the wrong idea of what that explosion was about. Quickly, he turned Hatsume over and put her in a chokehold. Okay, you have 10 seconds to explain why you just tried to kill me before I start beating it out of you, he threatened. Ichako and Tenya flinched at his threat. Did Midoriya really believe that she was trying to kill him? Power Loader tensed for a fight. He hadn't expected this kind of scenario. Much to Izuku's surprise, Hatsume laughed and started feeling his arms. Wow, you're so strong, and your arms are so muscly, Hatsume said while gasping for air. They'd be perfect for one of my babies. Izuku was left baffled by her response. He was expecting her to be afraid, not intrigued. He loosened his grip slightly so she could breathe properly. Okay, does the fact that I was choking and threatening you not mean anything? Izuku asked incredulously. Oh, who cares about that? Hatsume responded energetically. Izuku didn't know how to reply to that. Neither did the other people present. Why were you trying to kill me? Izuku asked uncertainly. The cheerful smile disappeared from Hatsume's face and was replaced by one of complete confusion. She wasn't the only one. The three people present were shocked at what they had just heard. Izuku genuinely thought Hatsume was trying to kill him. It wasn't just an angry reaction. Power Loader made a mental note to inform Nezu and Aizawa later. I wasn't trying to kill you. My baby just malfunctioned and exploded, Hatsume explained. You just happened to be there when it occurred. She's telling the truth, Power Loader interjected. Hatsume would never try and kill anyone. Izuku stayed still for a moment before releasing Hatsume fully and helping her up. He looked at her apologetically. Sorry about that. I've had a lot of bad experiences recently, and I guess I just overreacted, Izuku said. Hatsume grinned at him. Don't worry about it. If stay focused on the past, you'll never enjoy the present, she said enthusiastically. Izuku was taken back by her cheerfulness. Sorry about the explosion. You guys are from the hero course, right? Sorry, but I don't remember your names, she said. Ichako and especially Tenya took offense to that. I'm Izuku Midoriya. I transferred this semester, Izuku told her. I'm Tenya Ida, the man you used as a walking advertisement during the sports festival, Tenya piped up. Got it. Anyways, I'm busy so I gotta get back to working on my babies, Hatsume said, completely disregarding them. They instead turned their attention to Power Loader. We were hoping to speak to you about costume remodeling, Ichako said. I was hoping to make myself a weapon to better defend myself, Izuku said. Under your supervision, Mr. Power Loader. Before the teacher could answer, Hatsume was right in Izuku's face. Costume remodeling and weapon creation. Color me intrigued, she exclaimed. Hatsume, Power Loader called out. It's fine if you basically live in the studio since you are living on campus now. But if you keep ignoring my instructions and causing havoc in here, I'll have no choice but to ban you. That shut her up. He then turned his attention to the students. Eraser gave the heads up about why you're here, he told them. So come on in. As it turned out, the development studio was filled with various tools, materials and machinery for costume development. Izuku thought it looked like a secret lab. Power Loader went on to request costume designs from Iida and Uraraka, so he could make adjustments to them. He explained his license for this and the procedures involved with costume changes, both small and large. He then turned his attention to Izuku. What sort of weapon were you hoping to make exactly? He asked politely. Izuku thought about this for a moment. I was thinking maybe a bow staff made of metal, the kind that doesn't break easily, but it can be split in two and put back together easily. It would also be able to retract into a smaller size to make it easier to carry around, Izuku explained. Does that sound stupid? Power Loader chuckled. It wasn't the first time he'd heard that question, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. Hardly. A weapon like that has been made before, so it shouldn't be too difficult, he reasoned. That's good to hear, Izuku said. He then stopped upon feeling his body being touched. He looked down to see that Hatsume was the one doing it. Izuku should have been bothered by it, but Hatsume wasn't trying to do him any harm. He let it go on. Though he was curious about it. Why are you feeling my body? He asked calmly. So, I can get a good feel of what you're made and capable of, Hatsume said without an ounce of shame. Some of my babies would really do you good. Ichako, again for some reason, felt an immense amount of jealousy. Tenya just glared at Hatsume, still furious over what she did to him during the sports festival. You really like inventing stuff, don't you? Izuku questioned amused. Hatsume brightened at this question. I love it, she responded enthusiastically. When I graduate I'm gonna enroll at a support company, so I can share my babies with the world. A noble dream, Izuku said. I wish you well with that. Thank you, she replied happily. Power Loader was surprised at how encouraging Izuku was being to Hatsume. He wasn't mad. Actually, he thought it was rather nice of him. While this going on, Tenya and Uraraka tried to speak with Power Loader about what improvements they wanted. Tenya wanted a radiator upgrade to lessen the drawbacks of his Recipro. Ichako wanted to be able to float without experiencing any negative effects. Unfortunately, they were overheard by Hatsume. Almost instantly, she strapped these gloves, she referred to as boosters, onto Ida's arms, pressed a button, and skyrocketed him up into the air, until he was pressed against the ceiling. When he fell back down, he was furious and demanded an explanation, which she justified by suggesting he run on his arms if his legs got tired. It didn't make sense to anyone. Sorry about that. Her ego knows no bounds. It's like a sickness really, Power Loader apologized. We know, Tenya and Ichako deadpanned. That said, if you're gonna be heroes, you should value your ties with hers. One day you'll be going to her for help. See that pile of junk in the corner? Power Loader said while pointing at the mountain of gadgets. They're all support items that Hatsume built since the start of the school year. Whenever she has free time, she always comes in here and tinkers with something, even on days off. I've seen quite a few support students in my day, but Hatsume is in a league of her own. Izuku was impressed with Hatsume's inventive abilities. If she made all this in just 4 months, then who knows what she could make once she graduated from school. Common sense is a collection of prejudices acquired by age 18. Quote by Einstein. That girl doesn't fear failure. Every one of her ideas gets put to the test, Power Loader informed them. The best inventors out there are unconstrained by convention. That sounded quite inspirational. Ichako asked about upgrades for her costume. Hatsume was behind her instantly with a wooden barrel with a string attached to it. From the student's point of view, it looked like a bomb, yet Hatsume was walking towards them with an enthusiastic grin on her face. Though he had nothing against the woman, Izuku moved incredibly fast and was behind her instantly, where he applied a karate chop to her neck, knocking her out instantly. I'm sorry, but I don't feel like being blown up, Izuku addressed the people in the room. Neither do we, Tenya and Ichako agreed. It's fine, really. I'll let it slide this time since you probably prevented an explosion from taking place, Power Loader told them. How long will she be out? Izuku thought about it. A few minutes at least, he informed the pro. I didn't do it that hard. Anyway, let us get back to why we are here, Power Loader said. You want to make yourself a bow staff, right? We can make that for you. You don't have to make it yourself. Izuku raised an eyebrow. Oh, I see. It's just that when I was with the league I made most of my own gear, Izuku explained. Including your costume? Power Loader questioned. Izuku nodded, much to the pro's surprise. He thought someone else made it. The helmet that covered my head was given to me by Kurogiri, however, Izuku pointed out. I see. Out of curiosity though, what sort of weapons did you use before? Power Loader asked. Let's see. I use a taser, some knives, ice grenades, and sleep grenades from Mustard, Izuku informed the man. I also used a grappling hook which I still use. Tenya remembered that he used some sort of chemical to heal during Hosu, though he didn't mention it because he had already told the police. Ichako was surprised at the wide variety of weapons he used, while Power Loader was impressed with what he had made. I am choosing to make a bow staff because people would probably feel safer, and also because I doubt people will trust me with anything sharp, Izuku explained. Considering his past, it does make sense, Tenya thought. Though I doubt he would try and kill anyone. He isn't that sort of person. Of that I'm certain. Power Loader considered Izuku's request. If you want that for a weapon then fine, he informed the boy. I see no problem with it. Ooh, can I make it? Hatsume requested. The fact that she was back up caught Izuku off guard. She should have been down for a few more minutes. Her desire to invent stuff was strong. Hold on a minute. Midoriya, would that be alright with you? Power Loader asked. It's your request after all. Izuku thought about it for a minute. Hatsume seemed really passionate about what she did and was quite good at it too. Maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing to depend on these people for once. Think you can handle it? Izuku challenged. Hatsume grinned. Definitely. I'll make you the best staff you've ever had. This time it was Izuku's turn to grin. Well, alright then. Hatsume, you're hired. Great, I'd better get working, she yelled as she turned back to her desk. Power Loader smiled at what he saw. This kid had an interesting effect on people. Tenya and Ichako proceeded to give him their designs. After this, they all headed back to training. On the way back, as the 3 students walked back, one of them started talking. That thing with Hatsume. What was that all about? Tenya asked concerned. Izuku didn't need to ask to guess what he was talking about. I'm not exactly sure myself, Izuku admitted. When that happened, I just reacted. Tenya and Ichako frowned. That was a bit much for a simple reaction. It felt so natural, he admitted. Like I was used to it happening, and I suppose I am. Dream sequence. Flames danced around the area as Izuku struggled to breathe. The screams of children filled the air as they tried to escape while others were crying from burns. Yumi and Utada were doing their best to save them, but the assailant made things difficult. Shida lay close to him unconscious, blood leaking down his forehead from hitting his head. Take this, you quirkless fucker. The assailant shouted. A torrent of fire shot straight for him. He couldn't move. He was in too much pain. Closing his eyes, he waited for the inevitable. Dream sequence end. Izuku suddenly felt faint as he held his hand to his head. Another vision. Izuku pondered. Why do they keep happening? Even since the hospital, Izuku had been having strange hallucinations of people and events he had never seen before. However, they were not common and usually took a specific phrase or action to occur. He didn't know why though. Tenya and Ichako were concerned by his reaction. Anyway, I've had a lot of bad experiences like that, so reacting that way must have become normal for me, he admitted. Neither of them agreed with that. If reacting like that was normal for him, then that meant only one thing. Izuku was living in fear. More than that, he was traumatized. I'm guessing it's more than just those experiences, Tenya thought. He didn't exactly have a happy life before joining the league. He knew Izuku had been bullied, but he didn't know to what extent or how. It doesn't matter now, Izuku said finally. All I can do is live and move forward. If you ever want to talk about it, we're here for you, Tenya assured him. Izuku felt a certain warmth at hearing that. Aside from his mother and Kurogiri, no one had ever said that to him before. Thanks, but I'm fine, really, he assured them. Now, we should get back to class before Aizawa gives us detention. And with that, they finally returned to class. In his office later that day, Aizawa arrived at the principal's office to speak with him, having been unable to the previous day due to him being away on school business. Much to his surprise, Power Loader was there as well. Ah, Eraser, I was hoping to speak with you, he said. Aizawa raised an eyebrow. Then he realized what it was about. Did something happen when my students visited you today? He questioned. Yes, but I'd like to talk about that with you and Nezu, Power Loader replied. Oh great, Aizawa internally moaned. The two had it inside to see Nezu, who greeted them both. They, in turn, informed him as to why they were here. Power Loader went first as Aizawa wanted to know what went down with his students. He explained how Izuku reacted when the explosion occurred, how he got the wrong idea, and threatened Hatsume. I see. This is troublesome, Nezu acknowledged. I'll punish him if that's what you want, Aizawa piped up. Power Loader waved his head. I don't want that at all. Things were fine after this, and he got along with her well, he argued. I'm not mad at him, but the way he acted, and how he looked during it. He genuinely believed that Hatsume was trying to kill him. There was silence. Power Loader couldn't forget the look on Izuku's face. There was fear and suspicion in his eyes. It was like he expected someone to be trying to kill him. Nezu and Aizawa were concerned. It seemed that Izuku had a lot more going on with him than they originally thought. It could be because of the past attempts made on his life, Nezu suggested. If that's the case, then perhaps we should set up counseling sessions between him and Hound Dog. Do it then, Aizawa urged. Regardless of his past, Midoriya is still a student here. And like all students, when he needs help and guidance, we give it to him. He's not a bad kid, you know, Power Loader piped up. He was very encouraging to Hatsume. He's even letting her make that bow staff he requested. Nezu and Aizawa said nothing. However, they were both privately glad at what Izuku was doing to the students. Whether it was intentional or not, he seemed to have a good impact on them. I understand, Nezu said. Now then, Eraser. Why did you come to see me? Is it also something to do with Midoriya? Aizawa's face became serious. Not exactly. It was something he reported to me though, about Hitachi Shinso, he informed them. Nezu's eyes straightened in his chair. Power Loader shifted slightly. That Gen Ed kid with the brainwashing quirk? Power Loader asked. Aizawa nodded. Did he use his quirk on him or something? Power Loader asked. Aizawa shook his head. No, not at all. According to Midoriya, Shinso is being bullied because of his quirk, he explained. Nezu and Power Loader tensed at this information. Nezu was angrier at this information. One of his students was being bullied, and he was now just hearing about it. Explain, he commanded. Aizawa wasted no time in telling Nezu everything Izuku told him about what Hitachi was going through and what he thought. He even included the confirmation from Ichako for good measure. By the end of it, Nezu was furious. Power Loader was concerned. He wasn't scared of Hitachi, but he did feel uneasy about his quirk. I can't believe it, Nezu exclaimed frustrated. This has been going on for months, we weren't even aware of it. They all didn't like the names people called Hitachi. In fact, it made them angry. What do you think we should do to rectify that? Power Loader asked. For now, keep an eye on Shinso, Nezu suggested. If anyone bullies him, punish them without question. If they call him those names, give them a harsh lecture. Understood. If they want to be heroes, then they should start acting like it, Aizawa added. Power Loader had something else to add. Does this mean you're going to reconsider having him in the hero course? He wondered. I always wanted him in the hero course, Aizawa corrected. Everyone else, save Midnight, disagreed. That will need to be rediscussed at the next staff meeting. With that, the meeting concluded. Friday. The rest of the week went by quickly. The students trained and studied like usual. Aside from Izuku, other students from Class 1A had gone to Hatsume for upgrades on their costumes. While she was slightly distracted by this, she paid more attention to his request. Within 2 days she had completed the staff and it was up to all its requirements. She had really poured her heart and soul into it, something Izuku was grateful for. He had begun practicing with it and was quickly getting the hang of it. During his time with the League, Razor taught him how to wield certain weapons which made it easier. Bullying seemed to lessen for Hitachi, though he couldn't explain why. However, Izuku had a pretty good idea. The students in 1A seemed to have gotten used to his presence, so they weren't as edgy around him, though they still kept their guards up. For some reason, the school wanted him to attend counseling sessions with Hound Dog. He guessed it stemmed from the incident with Hatsume. The first one was late in the day and he was nervous about it. Throughout the week, he had had to deal with the problem known as Nido Monoma. Despite his previous speech to him, he continued to annoy Izuku and mock his class. Like now. Wow, it's the quirkless kid from 1A, he ranted. Are you and your class still trying to be the best? Don't bother. Eventually, we'll usurp you. Classes had just ended for the day, and he was heading back to the dorm when they ran into each other. For some reason, Nido was following him. Izuku was trying his best to ignore him. Keyword. Trying. What? Are you ignoring me? Am I not worth looking at? Nido continued to rant. God, he was annoying. Did he ever shut up? You really are arrogant, you know. As one would expect from Class A, always like they're better, Nido sneered. Okay, that did it. Izuku grabbed Nido by the throat and pinned him against the wall and glared at him with intensity. What the hell do you want from me? Izuku demanded. Nido flinched at his fury. This reminded him of them. Seriously, Monoma. What did I ever do to make you hate me so much? Izuku questioned. Don't use our first meeting as an excuse. You were the one trying to provoke me then. Nido straightened up a bit. You wouldn't understand. Class A is viewed as gods because of how successful they've been since the start of the year, while my class are seen as second-rate by everyone, including our own teacher, Nido vented. They had multiple chances to show everyone just how strong they are, to show they can be heroes. Izuku raised an eyebrow. He didn't exactly think almost being killed was a chance. However, at the same time, Izuku could see the emotions in Monoma's eyes. He clearly meant what he was saying. But that wasn't all. There was something else he saw in Monoma's eyes. He saw fear, loneliness, insecurity, and anger. And the second he did, he knew what was wrong. The bullier still bullies you? Izuku asked bluntly. Nido was taken off guard by this question. The expression on his face was replaced by one of shock and surprise. How did Midoriya know that? I don't know what you're talking about, he mumbled. Izuku rolled his eyes. Oh please. I know the look of someone who's bullied when I see one, he deadpanned. I used to be the same way. Your personality didn't spawn from nothing. Something had to have made you this way. Nido's eyes whitened. This guy had him figured out, and he hadn't even said anything. He shoved Izuku away angrily. It doesn't matter. I don't see why you would care anyway, he growled as he attempted to leave. Izuku wasn't having it. He waited until Monoma had changed into his regular shoes to head back to the dorm. When he was outside the school, Izuku grabbed him by the waist and hoisted him up onto his right shoulder. What are you doing? Nido shouted, completely baffled by Izuku's behavior. I'm taking you back to your dorm where I can get either the class representative or your homeroom teacher to do something about your behavior, Izuku answered rather bluntly. Because I am not putting up with this anymore. I have better things to do with my time, and I'm sure you do too. Nido argued strongly against this, but Izuku paid him no attention as walked to where 1B's dorm was. The people there were in for a surprise when they saw him with Monoma. A deserted street at an unknown location. So, we finally found you, Kurogiri, Deepbull gloated with a sinister grin. Atrocity would like a word with you. If one were to look at him, they would notice that Deepbull's hair was in the shape of a faux hawk mohawk that was lightning blonde. They would also notice his eyes were the same color. He was tall, and his skin was dark. Dressed in goth fashion with trousers with chains hanging down from each side, and an open jacket that exposed his bare chest, revealing that he was muscular. He also wore brown combat boots. You wouldn't get away this time, Muscular sneered. Kurogiri, who had a hood and scarf covering his face, wasn't intimidated. While he did fear Atrocity, these two he was more than capable of handling. He knew how to fight. Being in this life forced him to learn. Sorry to disappoint you, but I have no intention of speaking with that psychotic bastard, he snarled. That comment earned a grin from the pair. Now we can either do this easy way where you come back with us willingly or the hard way where we beat the shit out of you and drag you back, Deepbull threatened. I prefer the hard way, Muscular piped up excited. Underneath his scarf, Kurogiri was grinning. That makes two of us, he retorted. Nothing more was said. Muscular brought out the muscle fibers beneath his skin that covered the top part of his body. Deepbull's electricity flared emanating from his body. Kurogiri's black mist appeared from his hands. And just like that, the battle had begun. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.